I've been doing artist interviews for 10 years, and you have to believe me when I tell you this is going to be wild. Hunter Jackson, co founder of Gwar, is hitting the road again as Techno Destructo. After all these years, he has a comic book coming out, has started wrestling, and I can't wait to get to all of it. Hunter, how are you doing? Yeah. That's what you promised me. That's what I'm wanting. This is what we're all here for.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to go out with Gwar. It'll be fun, especially with all the crazy stuff I've been doing since the last time I was hanging out with Gwar. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be fun. And if you come to see the show, it's going to be awesome. And I mean that, especially for people who are like, I'm on the fence about whether or not I like the new Gwar and what they're doing and stuff like that. So, I'm like old school Gwar, I'm not sure if I like new Gwar or, stuff like that. So this is definitely the show for you to come to, because not only am I going to be there, but along the way, there are going to be also other special guest stars and stuff. Like I believe the Sexecutioner is going to be there. And I know that Sexecutioner and Techno Destructo will be drooling to kill each other once again. But then on the other hand, Techno Destructo is not going to be so excited about seeing the mistress of the unplumbed depths, Slymenstra Hyman. I'm not so sure he's going to be happy to see her again, but that could happen too. I think that she is actually going to show up in the Las Vegas show. So that one is going to be super intense and crazy.
Does that get annoying to you at all when people talk about old Gwar versus new Gwar? I mean, we survived a pandemic. Shouldn't we all just get along and have a good time?
Well, they first started doing it a long time ago. And at one point, there were like two camps, and they were like arguing with each other all the time and stuff like that, and all kinds of stuff. But I mean, that's all kind of silly. But I think if people come to this show, no, they won't see the Gwar that they saw in 1995. No, that's not going to happen. It's not going to be the show Gwar they saw in 2000. But it still is going to be pretty fucking awesome, and it's going to be worth going to see. And this is going to be a special show because it's sort of a tribute to those old days in a way, and it has a lot of the characters coming back for the first time in a long time. And I can't wait personally, because since then I've been doing all this professional wrestling stuff. So I can't wait to bring that to the Gwar stage in a new way. And we're going to rework what the old fans have seen before. I don't want to, blow any spoilers or anything, but there's going to be some really cool surprises, and it'll be fun, And I think that both the new Gwar fans and the old Gwar fans will both, get off on what we're going to do, and they should come,
Yeah,
this is going to be the one.
I mean, what are you going to do? Stay home? No, you're going to go to Gwar. That's what you're going to do. So in recent years, I've watched a lot of wrestling shows, biopics, movies, followed the personalities. And I know wrestlers to be some of the most far beyond driven, dream big, hardest workers, like my word is my bond kind of people. You just so creative, just work on your craft. So watching all that, have you always been a wrestling fan? Did you grow up as a wrestling fan? Is it something that's kind of new to you? Why'd you fall in love with it?
Oh, man. Even back in Richmond, Virginia, when we were first doing Gwar, and before that, I was a huge wrestling fan. And it just so happened that the Slave Pit, where we were doing all the Gwar stuff, was about 10 blocks away from the Richmond Coliseum, where they would do the wrestling shows. So that made it ideal, because that way we could get totally shit-faced in the Slave Pit first, and then walk to the wrestling show and not have to worry about driving, But then sometimes it would get out of control. And once you get to the Coliseum, then you're so drunk that you don't care that you're playing $5 for a couple of beers this big, and stuff like that. And it's a good way to blow money unnecessarily. But man, we had so much fun. We would always root for the bad guys. My favorites were Ivan and Nikita Koloff, the Russians. And my girlfriend at the time made us a bunch of red shirts with like a hammer and sickle on them. So I would go and buy like half a dozen tickets and then sell them to my friends, and we would go in a big group and have a real lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I would try to get. You couldn't really get first or second row seats, but you could get third if you went right away. You could get third row seats, and that's close enough where the wrestlers actually hear you when you yell at them and stuff. And that's the magic of the live show. And we would be rooting for the bad guys in these red shirts. And this was in the Ronald Reagan Cold War years too. And we would stand up and cheer for the Russians, and the whole audience would just go ape shit, And the Russians would always fight this team. It was these two little scrawny guys with long hair called the Rock and Roll Express. And they would just the Russian dudes would just mercilessly pound them down for the whole show, and we would cheer like crazy. And then through some fluke, the Rock and Roll Express would always win, and then the crowd would just go crazy. Wah!
Yeah.
We used to have a blast. So then once we were doing the Gwar show, and we would we would write a record, like, for instance, the Morality Squad record that had Edna Grambo and the Morality Squad and the All-American Superhero dude and all that stuff. We had those characters. So we would tour the whole country playing those characters, and then we would want to do it again right away while we were still sort of hot and everything. But we would go, oh, man, we don't want to do the exact same show. And then we were like, oh, let's do a wrestling show. So we would put the ropes across the front of the stage, and then during the show, we would have wrestling matches, and the band's playing the whole time and all like that. And the climax of the show would always be the, battle for the intergalactic belt of total world domination, and it would be Odorous Urungus and the Sexecutioner against the Techno Destructo Express. It was fun.
That's awesome. I love that. So going to the wrestling matches was kind of like your Gwar show. Like, everyone gets to go experience Gwar, but like your Gwar experience was going to the wrestling show down the street.
Yeah, you're right. In a big way, it was. In a big way, it was. And then we got to bring that to the Gwar stage. And then after I was out of Gwar and I was living in California, I got an opportunity to perform at a really crazy show where somebody was just trying to do this, 3-ring circus of as much crazy shit. It was a wedding show. It was somebody's wedding for one of the people in the band, the Radioactive Chickenheads. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They've been accused of being like Gwar or a Gwar ripoff band, but I definitely would never call them a ripoff band of Gwar. They're too different, but they are crazy and theatric, and they're called the Radioactive Chickenheads, and they all have these weird, like, cylindrical chicken heads, and they all have different characters that have funny names, and they're led by this guy who's actually, his name is Carrot Top, and he has a carrot-shaped head. And he's the lead singer. That's funny.
I love that. That's great. Yeah.
He's the lead singer, and when his costume is built, he has this chin that bobs. His pointy carrot chin is pointy. So when he sings, he goes like this, and his chin bobs. It's a cool band. I like them a lot. I really like them. So anyway, one of the people on the Radioactive Chickenheads was getting married, or two of the people actually were getting married. So they were going to have this big, crazy Las Vegas production. and there was going to be wrestling at the show. And Jake the Snake Roberts, who was a certified minister, was actually going to deliver the whole ceremony and say the vows or whatever it is they do. So, and when I heard about that, I was like, cool, how do I get in on that? That sounds like fun, And so that was the first time I got to play Techno Destructo in the wrestling ring in California. And I met Sin Bodhi, who was the leader of the wrestling aspect of the show and who is actually Jake the Snake Roberts' understudy. That's how I met him, and that's how I got into professional wrestling, and all like that. So then I got an opportunity to bring all the stuff that I'd learned from Gwar, like doing blood bags and using blood in the show, and just the whole theatrical nature of doing Techno Destructo live. But wrestling is a whole different world from touring in a band, because in the band, it's like you get on your tour bus and you drive from Houston to Austin, and you're going to do basically the same show to the same music. So once you pick up on the musical keys, it's like, okay, all right, I know I'm going to wallop Odorous at this point in the song, so I got to get set up for that. Or, I'm about to sing, so I better, wrap up what I'm doing on, fight-wise, so I can get to the microphone and not screw up my lines, Mm-hmm. So, but on the other hand, what you do in professional wrestling is you get one chance you might never have another match with this particular wrestler ever again. This city, this place where you're performing, they might never see you ever again. This is your one time, and you don't get, if you screw this up, you don't get to try again tomorrow night, and maybe you'll hit the right mark tomorrow night. Or the funny thing about Gwar is when we would do our first show of the tour in Richmond, Virginia, we suck. Everything's like discombobulated, and the musicians are having musical problems. We haven't got the choreography down. Everybody's like, oh, blah, 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 But then by the time we get to LA, whoa, everything is like bam, boom, bam, So then the people back home in Richmond who saw that crazy fucked up show, they're reading the reviews of the LA show and they're going, what? Are you kidding me? So it was fun, Gwar is fun. So despite all of the like super intense politics and, itchiness of having 10 people, each one has their own secret motivation in the first place.
Well, good thing it's 2021 and we're over politics, right? I mean, yeah. It means we're all
hard to work together as one machine, well-oiled machine,
Well, there you go. So I wanted to ask, what kind of child were you growing up? When did you start to have these grand ideas? Where are you from? Man. Tell me about all that.
Well, I grew up in a sort of out in the sticks, not in the city. And my old man was like the warden of this big prison. And I grew up on this little hill in this little shoebox of a house that was surrounded by a huge prison. And Richmond, Virginia was the closest, biggest city, So, and it was like an hour's drive away from where I lived. So I was pretty isolated. And plus on top of that, I had 3 sisters. So I was like the oddball out from the get-go, And so I sort of retreated into this world of comic books and TV and stuff just to get away from my sisters and all that sort of, And so that's sort of where it evolved from, but at the same time, I knew that, I can't wait to get to the city because I know that's where a lot more interesting things, that's where they have cooler comic books, and then when I would visit my relatives that lived in Washington, D.C., it was like, wow, up there, they have more than 3 TV channels, you know? So I knew there was a world, there was a bigger, better world out there somewhere, you know, than the swamps that I grew up in. So as soon as I could, I escaped that into the city, you know, and I was an art student in Richmond, Virginia. And in the time when it was in the disco era, you know, so the hippie era was sort of dissolving away, you know, and it was turning into this super horrible disco. Everything was disco, you know, even the new James Bond movie was disco, you know. And I would look at Playboy magazine and I would go, oh my God, you know, you know, everything was disco. And that's where punk rock came from. It's because there was a lot of people out there that were like, oh, I just can't take anymore this disco. And that's where punk rock came, you know. So I was right there at sort of the cusp of that whole punk rock explosion. And because Richmond, Virginia is just 90 minutes south of Washington, D.C., a lot of cool bands like the Dead Kennedys and bands like that and Iggy Pop and stuff that would come and play in Washington, D.C., they're like, oh my God, I came all the way to the fucking East Coast out here. What am I going to do? Oh, Richmond, Virginia is only 90 minutes south. Well, let's go do a show there real quick, you know? So as long as there was a decent place for them to play, bands would come down and do cool shows in Richmond, Virginia. So much to my surprise, as I later on got older and found out of the history of the scene or whatever, you know, it turns out that Richmond, Virginia was a place where a lot of really cool bands came and played and stuff, you know.
Awesome.
So a lot of the musicians behind Gwar, so we sort of started out as sort of a punk rock band, and Dave Brocky had this punk rock band called Death Piggy that his headquarters for that band was in the same building as where I was trying to make a movie, you know, and sort of his musical and my movie that I wanted to work on. I wanted to make a movie that was the antithesis of Star Wars, because I saw Star Wars as like invested with disco, just like everything else was during that time. And I wanted to show the world what a cool science fiction movie could be like. And the movie I wanted to do would be a movie that was like Road Warrior in outer space with a really super intense punk rock soundtrack, you know? And so Dave was doing Death Piggy and I was doing weird theatrical things with him in that band. Like, for instance, one time Death Piggy warmed up for Wendy O. Williams. She was in the Plasmatics, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I know about her because of the Butcher Babies. We love her very much. Shout out. Man, she's
awesome. She was the shit. I'll never forget seeing her live, man. Wow. And getting to hang out with her and talk to her later was really fun too. But anyway, when she came to Richmond, Death Piggy was the warm-up band. So we thought it would be really funny. And she had just been in Playboy, posed in Playboy. And she was complaining because they had airbrushed her ribs out and stuff, you know. And she was all cut from working out. And they had airbrushed some of her muscles and veins out too. And she was pissed. And, you know, personally, I think that would have been awesome. But we thought it would be funny if during the Death Piggy set, he pulls out the Playboy magazine and he actually has a wing wong that he can into the audience, you know. And so
That's hilarious.
I made it out of a ketchup bottle, like a diner ketchup bottle. And then you take the top, you can screw the top off. So I made a dickhead out of foam, and then put veins on hot glue, you know, and painted it skin tone, you know. And I had a vacuum cleaner hose on it too, so it had this good motion going on with it. But when we thought it was going to be a big surprise and people were going to get it all over him and all this. and he filled it up with some kind of oatmeal or something like that. But the crowd just like parted like the Red Sea, and it was just went on. But it was still funny. It was still funny. But that was where the first spew dick was. And see, later on, he brought that funny gag from Death Piggy into the Gwar show, with Spades.
Wow.
After they started, because it was the thing about Gwar is that different people did different sorts of stuff in the show, would contribute different ideas or different aspects of the show. I was like always contributing the weird, like science fiction-y background mythos of it in a way. And Dave would contribute all the weird sex stuff, like the spew dick into the audience, and like one of my favorite ones that he and Mike Bonner came up with, who Mike Bonner was one of the artists who played the slave and helped Dave build this thing, it was like a big chaos wheel, big chaos arrows wheel, and he had a corpse that was tied, like nailed to it or something, attached to it in some way. And it was made so that he could chop all the girls, it was a female, and he could chop all the arms and legs off as he spun it around and sang to it. And then it was made so that he could sort of stick it in and spin the wheel, while he's singing the song,
And they say romance is dead. Really, I mean,
yeah.
it's
and I'll tell you something else. And that leads us into the current show, because one of the characters that I used to play in the old show, and this is a show, this is a character that this executioner contributed to a lot to as well, was the bad biker bitch. And the bad biker bitch is sort of like Gwar's biggest groupie, or like Odorous' girlfriend, or things like that. And she's like this super intense girl that has like boobs like footballs, and she's got this big, huge butt. And she comes out and she's armed with a double dildo that's about 3 feet long that she uses like nunchucks as a weapon, and she's mad at the band because, well, you'll have to come to see the show to see why she's mad at the band. But
I've been to one Gwar show, and I remember it was like 10, 12 years ago. So I'm glad I get to experience it again as a grown woman, and I can fully appreciate all of it, because I'm fully, like in my body, and I'm a full grown woman now. So now I can appreciate all of it. I think like when I was 22, it might have scared me off a little bit. I think that would have been like the first double dildo I ever saw. Like now that I'm now I know all the things, like now I can fully appreciate it. I don't know if I would have seen that, but I love the biker bitch character. It reminds me of that character reminds me my favorite movie, The Jerk, with Steve Martin in it. That biker bitch in that movie is such a funny character too.
Oh man. Yeah. And so did you get to see her in the live stream that we did recently?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. And now I'm saving it all for the live show, darling. I didn't do the live stream. I'm all about the live show.
Well, it'll be pretty interesting. It was fun to do that. See, this is sort of similar to the live stream that we did like a year ago or so. Mm-hmm. And I came back for the first time. That was like literally the first time I'd seen a lot of those guys in 15 years.
Wow.
The first time I'd spoken to them, the first time I'd been in the same room with them for 15 years. So it was pretty weird in some ways, but at the same time, it was fun in a lot of ways. And so here we are. We're going to try it again and see how this tour works,
I was talking about this the other day with someone, and I was talking about like how I reacted differently to situations because I've matured and I thought about them differently after the fact. Do you think it's working out okay now because so much time has passed and everyone's grown up a little bit more and changed a little bit? Do you think that has something to do with it? Yes or no? And that's just a thing I'm throwing out there because I was talking about the other day. I think it goes to like human nature. I find human nature interesting. how different instances hit us later down the road, later in life.
Well,
I don't know, agree or disagree. I don't know.
I think that for a lot of people, feelings change, and for others, they don't. But I think for me on this score, the reason I'm doing this is because there might not be, you never know, there might not be another chance, you know? So, you know, life is short. It could be over at any time, you know? And you don't get to, and I would rather do it than 5 years from now wish I had. You know what I mean? If only I had tried. I don't really know. You don't really know unless you try, you know? And I think more good things than bad things will come out of it. And plus I want to promote my new stuff, and I want to show off some of the new skills I picked up. And plus, on top of that, there are tons of Gwar fans out there that have never seen me perform live, you know? Mm-hmm. And not only have they never seen me perform live, but they've never seen me perform live at the state I'm at now. And I was just talking to somebody recently, and I'll tell you what, it might be 30 years later, but I bet you that I could kick my 30-year-old ass.
Yes, I love that. Yes.
Over the last 10 years, I could kick my 30-year-old ass easy. Right now.
See, this is the good. This is like, you know, I just met you, but we're talking about very deep things here. I'm taking a sip of my drink. We're talking about life things. And I feel like we've broken some barriers and gotten to like the deep of what really matters in life. And that's pretty fucking cool. So hell yeah, let's keep going. But thank you. That was lovely.
I think I'm going to have to take a break.
I know. I know. And it's still stinging. It's so unfair. It's like it's the best my makeup has looked on a podcast and like, I don't know, ever.
You do look good. I gotta say, you do look good.
Oh, well, thanks. I tried real hard, but everything in life is give and take. I did like great hair, great makeup, and now I've got to have like a fucked up vibe for the rest of the podcast. So, hey, there you go. Everything in life is give and take. But thank you for that. So, what was just real quick, because we've talked about a lot. I know we have a lot of questions to get to. So, real quick, how did Gwar come together? I mean, if that's a real quick, maybe we should cut other questions, but I don't know how that's a real quick. But yeah, how did Gwar come together? Like, what's the story of it?
Well, there was a warehouse building in Richmond, Virginia, very near to the college that several of the people in Gwar went to. And after a bunch of us graduated and we're still sort of living in the city of Richmond, and Dave was involved with his band. I had grown up in the area all along, and I think at that point in my life I was actually working as a prison guard, and I had a warehouse space in downtown Richmond in this building that had been like, it was a place where they packaged ice cream and stuff, and it was the Richmond Dairy, and it had these two corner towers that were shaped like giant milk bottles. So everybody used to call it the milk bottle building. And it was actually inside, it was a crazy maze because it was actually 4 buildings that had sort of over the years grown together into one big building. So you would come to areas in the building where all of a sudden there would be like half of a stairway that would even out the floor. You know, and then all of a sudden you would come into a weird room that was like completely tiled, you know, all over, because it was some kind of a refrigeration room where they would, you know, store ice cream or store milk products or butter or something, you know. So, and the room that I had, the space that I was renting, the reason I liked it is it had room for some kind of giant machine. So there was a hole in the floor that went through to the next floor. And then there was a railing all the way around this hole and sort of a wrought iron ladder that went up. So I was like, this is perfect for my movie. This can be like the engine room down here. And then upstairs can be the bridge, you know? And I was like, cool, you know? So that I rented that space, and me and Chuck Varga, who became this executioner in Gwar, started working on our crazy science fiction movie. And at the same time, I had already met Dave Brocky and knew about his band Death Piggy. And you know, we started to collaborate with each other, you know, and I had liked the music and stuff like that. And he and I hit it off, you know. And so next thing you know, our projects, as each of our projects sort of like faltered, you know, all of a sudden they melded together into one super crazy project. And one of the things that happened to make that, to sort of facilitate that happening is, a lot of times Dave, he had the space where Death Piggy would practice, but he would create these other bands, you know? And so Death Piggy would always have like a bunch of weird bands that would warm up with them. So Gwar started as one of those weird bands that warmed up for Death Piggy. But then as Death Piggy started to fall apart, the crowd was more interested in the Gwar show. And Gwar sort of exploded like that. And that's sort of where it came from.
Wow. There you go. That was a roller coaster ride.
It sure was.
Yeah, that was a roller coaster ride. Hey.
It was way more intense to really be there. Believe me, if you were really riding the roller coaster, it was way more.
No, it was a very like unique story. Actually, it was like most bands don't come together like that. So that's exactly what I asked.
And there was a lot of people that were involved in it too, you know, and a lot of people would contribute with things, and then things would go sour and that person would drift away, you know, and, you know, be replaced by other people and stuff like that, you know, so.
There you go. Well, I have a few more questions, and we're going to go to the comic book things and all those questions. So I never met Odorous myself, since I never will on this planet. How should he be remembered?
Wow. Well, I don't know. It's hard for me to say, really, because personally, I never really got along with him that good, you know? But
where are we going to go with it?
No, I'll tell you.
I mean, that's interesting question then, right?
What I think people should take away, I don't want to say diss him in any way, right? But his story sort of came to its logical conclusion, you know? And when people choose to go down that path, then things are going to happen, you know? And what I'm talking about is drugs and stuff, you know? And, you know, there was in any band, you know, or even in any walk of life that you're in, there's always that. It's something that, you know, people that do that, you know, and, and in Gwar myself, I used to walk around saying stuff like, oh, I'll try anything twice, you know, and I probably almost did. But at the same time, what goes up must come down, you know, and the higher and better things make you feel, the more they'll bring you down in different ways. And that's what I found out. And to me, like, for instance, people would say, hey, Hunter, try this. It'll make you stay up all night and you'll get all kinds of work done. And I was like, really? That sounds like fun, you know, sure. You know? But then guess what? You end up being passed out for 2 days after that. So it sort of counterbalances, and there's not really any real, and then I would look at what I did and I would go, ooh, you know, So there's not. So in a way, I think that's what people should take away from Dave, because he was an incredibly talented person and he did a hell of a lot of cool stuff, But at the same time, it's too bad.
Yeah. Yep. I gotcha. Yeah, being a woman in metal myself, I was always very afraid of that. So I've never done drugs in my life, actually. Love alcohol, love that, but I've never done it because I've always been like really afraid of it. And it's a very scary thing.
What I always tell people too is I've been lucky enough in my life that I got to see other people ruin their lives. And I'm not talking about Dave in this instance, but I've seen enough people ruin their lives that I didn't want to go down that way.
Yeah, I gotcha. Cool. Well, thank you for that.
And I'm still here, still kicking ass.
So let's talk comic book. Let's see it. Yeah, tell me all the things. So we've got Sexy Vixen. Yeah. Oh, yeah, beating up all the post-apocalyptic robots of the Earth. Let's check it out.
Yeah. And see, this was a comic strip that I was doing. I was working on it a lot while we were riding on the tour bus and stuff, and I was all frustrated and pissed off because things weren't going right for me in Gwar. So I would be working on these comics and stuff. And it's something that this particular comic strip is one that I published it along with some of the Gwar comics that I was doing at the time, and over the years since then, I have added to the story and sort of fleshed it out because I always felt like it was kind of squished into a certain number of pages. And so now I would do more, add to the story, even though it was such a weird story that I knew every time I ever showed it to anybody, they would always look at it, any publisher, they would always look at it and go, "Oh, looks underground," And to me,
that's the meanest thing anyone could ever say.
Oh, yeah. And to me, I grew up, and that's a lot of where Gwar comes from as well, is underground comics. Because I was always into the Robert Crumb, those super crazy, weird Robert Crumb sex comics and stuff like that. I was always really into that. And part of one of the things that made Gwar fun and what makes especially characters like the Bad Bitch, Bad Bitch steps right out of a Robert Crumb comic practically. But, it's like bringing a Robert Crumb comic book to life, a cool underground comic. But then when I would show people when heroes roam the earth, they would go, "Oh, it's underground," And so I knew that it was unpublishable because it has a girl in a sexy costume, and sometimes she flashes a little bit too much. And there's, she likes to cuss, and it has Nazis in it, and it's really gory, and stuff like that. So between all those different elements, there's something to offend almost everybody. So, so in order for me to publish it, I had to do it myself,
Yep. And all of this from a prison warden's son with 3 sisters. So were they very boisterous? Was it hard for you to get a word out amongst your sisters?
No, I think it was. Yeah. I guess the short answer. But at the same time, you'll
spend the rest of your life telling everyone else, everywhere you go on your website, exactly what you think.
But at the same time, it sort of made me retreat into my own little comic book world, and where I would draw my stupid little characters and work on my things that all my sisters thought everything I did was stupid, even Gwar. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Over the years, they always thought, that can't possibly be anything worthwhile if he's involved with it, And so one day, my nephew comes home and he goes, "Mom," because she's super strict Catholic and wouldn't allow him to do certain things like watch Beavis and Butthead on TV, right? And so he comes home and he goes, "Mom, I was playing this funny Sega Genesis game with my friend, and in the game, it was really funny because the characters were burping and farting and stuff, and the dog had eaten the ticket to the concert and chewed it up, and you were trying to look for all the dog poop to find the ticket, broken pieces of the ticket, so that you could go to the Gwar show. And she went, "What? Gwar? What? What did you say? Gwar?" You know? And she would say, "Well, it was a video game, and you're trying to get tickets to go see the Gwar show." And at that moment, that was the first moment that, you know, they had ever heard of it outside of. Actually, there was an article one time where in the Washington, D.C. area newspaper that I remember all my aunts got a hold of this newspaper article and were all shocked by it, because I had said something like, there was a quote, you know, there were quotes from different people involved in the band, because it was one of those group discussion kind of interviews with lots of people. And so the quote from me was, "If I wasn't doing Gwar, I would probably be a serial killer," you know. And all of my aunts were like, "Oh my God."
Well, I'd love it even more. I love serial killers. All women do.
And my uncle, I had an uncle who was a school teacher in North Carolina. Or was it South Carolina? Might have been South Carolina. But anyway, it was the area where Gwar got arrested for disseminating obscenity, you know? If you heard about that, Gwar, and this was in the early days. This was back in the school bus days of Gwar. But the thing about the story is that Gwar wasn't really the target of the police. They wanted to shut the club down, you know, and they had heard that there was going to be this outrageous show that was going to have nudity and simulated sex acts, you know. So this must be stopped, you know. Mm-hmm. So and in the course of this show, we did a scene where this priest comes on with a crucifix, and he's going, "I'm going to have to exorcise you." You know, he's exorcising the demons out of Gwar. So Gwar starts doing jumping jacks and stuff. And then they take in the course of the ensuing song, they take the crucifix from the priest and turn him upside down. And he has this big, giant, fake ass. And they ran the crucifix up to his butt while blood shoots out of it into the audience, you know.
Oh, you know, so, low key, totally low key.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh,
it
you
wasn't
know.
like
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the police came backstage and they saw Odorous. They arrested Odorous because they saw him taking his costume off, and they confiscated the cuttlefish and put it in like one of those yellow construction buckets, those big 5-gallon construction buckets, and had it like a snake, like it was a poisonous snake or something. And they took it for evidence. And he was actually arrested and taken to jail that night. And they didn't know who was inside the priest costume, or they would have arrested him as well. But then in a court case that the NAACP jumped in and took our cause and won for us. And in the following court case and stuff, the club ended up getting shut down, you know, and that was sort of like the collateral damage of the story. But in reality, that was the real target of the local bad guys. I mean, police.
Wow.
Or authorities. I shouldn't say police, because they were just doing their job or whatever. It's like the people who told the police to go attack that night, you know, and shut that club down, you know, because that was the college kid club. You know, that was always making too much noise.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that was just one night of tour on one tour.
Yeah, that was one tour.
But,
he went to jail for overnight, and we had a really awesome tour manager that got him out of the jail. And I don't know if we missed a show or not. And then the funny part was, in the long run, our sentence, or the sentence that was that we weren't allowed to play in that town for a year, which in reality probably wasn't going to do anyway. You know?
Wow.
So it's crazy. Things are crazy like that.
So tell me about a school bus and tour stories in Austin, Texas. I'm a new Austinite, so I need to know some Gwar history and some Austin music history.
Well, Gwar's been going on solid for 30 years now. And I was part of Gwar for the first 15 years before things happened and I went a different way. And now here we are 15 years past that, where Gwar's been going on. They continued without me for another 15 years, and now Gwar's 30 years old, and they're having like a big reunion. But back in the early days, like the first tour that we made cross country, where we looped a whole loop around the country, we were touring in a school bus. And we had this converted school bus where the front third of it was seats, and then the middle third of it was a layer of plywood. So we had 2 layers where we had a mattress and then sleeping bags. And then after that was an area where all the equipment and all the props and costumes that we used for the show at the time went into that back little section, you know? And then we went and we did this cross-country tour where we played on shows that were where the stage was about as big as the pool table, you know, and Slimenstra was there, and the crowds didn't know how to respond to the spew and stuff at first, you know, and we would do the decap where the guy would get his head chopped off and blood would shoot out into the audience, but nobody had seen it before, so they like would back off, you know, and then this big, instead of the audience absorbing all this liquid, a big puddle would form. And then Slimenstra and I would take our battle scene down into that slosh, you know, and she would beat me up and wrap a chain around me and literally drag me around on the floor. And I would just be so completely filthy and everything. And then we would get back on the bus and go to the next show, you know, because we weren't making enough money to afford hotel rooms and everything. So unless there was some nice person that would allow 10 weirdos that they just met to come to their house and all take a shower one after the other, you know, unless that happened or the club happened to have showers at it, which never happened. So unless that, we there was nowhere for us to get cleaned up after the show, and we just got dirtier and dirtier. It was really fun in a way, though. But I remember a lot of shows we did in Austin and stuff that were, because there was a really cool artsy scene going on there, you know, and the crowds were really cool, and we had a lot of fun. I remember one time in particular where there was some sort of a festival going on in the area the same time, and this was in Austin, and I put my roller skates on, and I had all my Techno Destructo gear on, and I was roller skating around and handing out flyers to the show, you know. And then next thing you know, my picture got into the weekly entertainment paper, you know. It was pretty cool. So stuff like that was happening along the way, you know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And like before all social media, I'm assuming that was like before social media.
Oh, hell yeah. Because see, at that point, I was like, I had these bootleg videotapes that I made that was on VHS, right? And there was a little VHS rental shop in Richmond where I would go, and he kept the master tapes. And I would say, okay, we're going to go on the road, so I need you to make me 25 copies of each one of these VHS tapes, you know, and then I would take them on the road and sell them for $20 a piece, you know, and then I would bring back that money and use it to finance, you know, printing of a comic book or something like that, you know.
Awesome.
And that's one. And so now here we are 30 years later, and I get to I'm putting out a bootleg. Well, no, it's not really a bootleg. It's like I'm putting out a comic book. I'm printing a comic book. And I've been doing the House of Huntar website online. That's one of the things about that has been weird for COVID with me, is because up until COVID, what I was doing was I was working as a professional wrestler, but I was playing Techno Destructo. So I had the whole mechanical arm, just like the one that's back there, you know. And so I was playing the whole character from Gwar and everything. although I didn't use the Gwar music or anything, and I was trying to use new characters. Like one of the new characters I used in wrestling was Barrister Orlock, who is Techno Destructo's steampunk time-traveling lawyer, and he's this kind of sleazy sort of character like Sleazy and Gwar, where he's like his human manager in a way, but he's actually his lawyer, so he can predict, what kind of there's some videos on the House of Huntar YouTube page about Techno and Barrister Orlock and different stuff like that. So, and I've also been able to work with a lot of really cool, mysterious space dominatrix characters as well, like Marie Brandon, who is a professional bodybuilder, and she works at Dave Fisher's Powerhouse Gym in Torrance, California. And there's a really awesome video that she helped me with where she plays Techno Destructo's or Barrister Orlock. By looking into the future, he's able to tell that Techno Destructo is going to lose his next wrestling match unless he ups his training regime. So he takes him to this super intense, muscle-bound dominatrix chicks who whips him, while he's lifting weights and stuff. It's really funny.
That's so funny. So quick question. On her, because I've looked her up, so I've seen the photos. What is her outfit? What's on her bottoms or bikini bottom or whatever that is? There's little figures on those. I can't figure out what that is. What's her outfit? Because I looked at that and I was trying to figure out what was all on there. Because I saw the bodybuilder woman that you're talking about.
Yeah, she's awesome. And when I work with these different women, I like for them to sort of customize the character to their own tastes or, whatever makes them feel like be into it. I don't want to say, okay, this is your costume. This is what you wear. What I sort of have in mind is I've made these plastic battle bikinis.
Battle bikini. There you go. It was what's it called? Yeah, it's a battle bikini. There you go.
They're like this. See, one of the reasons that Gwar happened really is because I got a job doing an artificial limb shop or working at an artificial limb shop, working at an artificial limb shop. And I picked up a lot of crazy, weird techniques and stuff like that I applied to making props and costumes. And one of my favorite ones is the battle bikini. This is the bottom. This is made out of black plastic vacuum form plastic. Okay,
so those are horns, right?
So it's solid. So these are rubber spikes. And they're sort of old. They're sort of old and rotten. See, this one's broken off, but this is hard plastic. Uh-huh. And then it has room so it can fit different size people. But there's not a lot of. This was made off of a pretty skinny girl. So
there's not a lot of give there.
There's not a lot of give there. But I have 3 different tops. This one doesn't have spikes on it.
As a woman, that's so funny as a woman, just looking at it what size battle bikini do you wear? What?
Yeah, so I have 3 different sizes. So between the 3.
That's so funny. Yeah.
This is, let's see, let me make sure I'm holding it up right. This one goes like this. See?
I saw as a woman. I was okay, so that goes up there and ties right there.
This is the fully enhanced stripper model.
Yeah. But that's probably what my boobs would go into. I have pretty big boobs, so there you go. That's probably my model right there.
The cool thing about it is they're completely adjustable, and because they're held together by 2-inch thick Velcro, there's not going to be costume malfunctions and stuff like that. Theoretically.
What us as women call that, we call it lots of support. So it has lots of support, 2-inch straps. That's funny. Yeah. So you were going on with it. Sorry, I interrupted you about the battle bikini, but you were talking about that. Were you going somewhere else with it?
No, I just wanted to show you that's one of the things I do. But what I was talking about is that's sort of the female character's uniform. And then I tell them that, you can wear whatever kind of boots you want. Some people like to go barefooted or different things like that. And some people have something in mind that they want to emulate. Or like one of the women that I work with the most is Princess Paramore. And she is Latina. So she likes to have the like sort of an Aztec, a little bit of an Aztec taste to what she does, which is pretty cool, you know. So I like to work with all different, as many different kinds of women as I can. It's really fun that way, and that way the audience it doesn't go, oh my gosh, where is so and so? You know, oh my God, it's the end of the world. You know, where's so and so?
That's funny. I love that. That's so cool.
And it's fun, and plus, like when I work with them too, when I'm making movies and stuff, I don't like to give them lines. I like them to make up. I'll say, okay, I want you to say something like basically this, and then but say it how you would say it, you know, rather than me like put words in their mouth like that. You know? Yeah, it's much more fun like that.
There's so much sci-fi and I think comedy that goes hand in hand with Gwar. Duh. So who do you think gets it right? Who do you think gets it wrong in sci-fi? You already said that you're not a Star Wars fan, which I love. I've seen Star Wars like maybe twice in my life, not by choice, not a fan of that. So I love that you already kind of talked about that a little bit. Who gets it right? Who gets it wrong in sci-fi? And we'll go to comedy.
Well, I think Star Wars kind of grew on me as the story unfolded. And in fact, I think the very last one, that's the one I like the best. But the funny part about the story is I didn't like Star Wars until my son and I started playing Lego Star Wars on a video game together. And then I started to get into the different characters and stuff like that. And that made me look back into the movie, you know, because I'd seen the first ones and that had turned me off so much that I didn't follow through and watch all of them. You know, and then years later, when my son was coming up and he was all into Star Wars big time, you know, then I past researched it. And that was right at the time when the last movie was coming out, you know. So I thought that's when I started to get into it. But let me answer your question, because that's not the answer to your question.
No, but that's fabulous. That's why you ask questions to get like a better question and a better answer.
But a lot of where Gwar came from, for me, as well, not just the underground comics and stuff, but, you know, I was talking about how I was this little redneck kid and I knew there was a universe out there that had other things to experience that I would never experience if I stayed here sitting in the swamp that I was born in, right? So once I got out to Richmond, I realized that not only in, you know, when you go to Washington, D.C., are there more than 4 TV channels, but there are comic books from other countries like Japan and Great Britain and stuff. And so when I was getting out of college and stuff, I discovered the British comics like 2000 AD, where Judge Dredd comes from. I mean, everybody's heard of Judge Dredd. Well, Judge Dredd is just one character in a whole pantheon of really incredibly cool science fiction characters that were coming out of Britain at the time. And these really incredibly great writers and stuff. Some of them have come to America and done other things that they're more famous for that I don't even like as much. But a lot of these stories that, or comic book stories that I was reading, you know, I was getting these British comics and stuff. A lot of them work their way into the whole Gwar mythos. Like they had this one guy that was like, his name was Slain, and he was like this Conan barbarian guy with tattoos all over him. He was like some kind of like Celtic maniac, and he would suck up the power of the earth goddess, you know, through his feet and by touching the ground. And he would have what he would call a warp spasm, where he would sort of like turn into the Hulk, and his only weirder, and his head would like split open like a volcano and fire would shoot out and stuff. Or they would have these Nemesis the Warlock, which was a character who looked like Satan. He looked like a goat monster, but he was the good guy of the story. The bad guy of the story was Torquemada, who led this huge, like, giant Catholic religion that was conquering the universe and torturing people to turn to Christianity, basically. And so that's where a lot of Cardinal Sin and the Holy Warriors from Outer Space sort of was influenced a lot by that, and
Fabulous.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the Japanese comics, like the idea of the giant robot and stuff like that. And like I collected the Power Rangers and stuff like that. I would kill people to get a hold of those videotapes of stuff like Power Rangers and stuff. And then when it was translated into English, I was horrified to find out that something that I thought was so cool was actually for 6-year-olds.
Yep, that's funny.
Like, no, this isn't the Power Rangers. But you know what? If you go back and look at the original Power Rangers and stuff, the villainous of even the first season is talking about killing all humanity and kill this person, kill that person. It's pretty vicious, but they sort of like changed it all around. But anyway, and like my very favorite is Mazinga Z, which is like a giant robot, which has this villain. One of the villains is this guy, Count de Capito, who is his head like comes off and flies around on a little flying saucer, and stuff like that. And like just weird, crazy stuff like that,
So all of these wild influences, like these characters didn't come out of nowhere. You've had so many crazy influences and you've seen so many crazy characters. Okay.
And war games, miniature war games was a big part of it too, because all of that was just starting to take shape. Games Workshop in Britain was just starting to take shape at the time, and I was collecting the miniatures. We didn't like the game system. The Warhammer game system, we always felt it was way too complicated. So we just made up our own rules and would roll dice and kill each other on into the night, a lot of times.
Awesome.
And I would take games with us on Gwar, on tour with Gwar as well, and play games. We actually had a Gwar miniatures game as well. It was called Rumble in Antarctica. And it was all about the Gwar characters fighting amongst themselves. And each Gwar character had their own like band of slaves and stuff that were battling around. And when we went on tour that year, me and Casey Orr, who was playing Beefcake, would go to the Game Geek stores and play the game, demo the game in character. So it would be Techno Destructo against Beefcake playing this war game and rolling dice. And then we would take a break and sign autographs for half an hour. And then we'd get back to the game, It was fun. It was really fun.
That sounds so fun. That sounds awesome. That's so cool. I love that. What were you saying? You were like, I was just going, that's so fucking cool. You were still going. There was another one.
That's what I'm looking forward to. I can't wait to get these guys in the tour bus with the new games that I'm playing now.
Perfect. Nice.
We'll be rolling dice and killing each other all over the place.
There you go. Okay, real quick, comedy. Do you like comedy? Do you like watching it? Do you have any favorite comics? Are you your own favorite comic? You're a pretty cool character.
I don't know. What do you mean?
You're very entertaining in the way that I appreciate from comedy.
No, I mean like comics. What do you mean?
Just like really funny. Like I love comedy. And so much of Gwar, it's if you don't go there with a good sense of humor, you're not going to have a good time. So it requires you to be a fan of comedy to be in the right mindset to enjoy something like that. So I'm a huge fan of comedy. If you're not of that mindset. So I didn't know, like, hey, do you love comedy? Do you have any favorite comics? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know. I mean, I watch I watch as much TV as possible. So I don't know. I don't have anybody in particular right now that I'm super into or anything.
Okay, well, check out the Ronnie Chang Netflix special. Hilarious. It's my favorite. He's one of my favorites. And I watched Chappelle's Show today, the new one, his new Netflix special. Good. Cool. Well,
man, I did. I have one that there was a movie that I saw recently that I thought was incredibly great, and it was called Killing Hasselhoff. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
It's really funny. It's by this Asian comic that was on Saturday Night Live. I don't know I can't remember his name, but the object of the premise of the movie is that he and his buddy are like these really superficial guys that work in Hollywood on movies. So they've been exposed to a lot of Hollywood stars and stuff like that. And they're really jaded on the whole like Hollywood glamour scene sort of. And they're participating in a death pool, right? And so they decide that they're going to try to win the death pool by entering David Hasselhoff's name because he's working on a movie that they're working on. And they're going to enter him in the death pool, and then they're going to murder him and win the death pool, right? And so David Hasselhoff is in this movie and plays himself. And he plays this hilarious parody of himself where he's just like so incredibly superficial that the movie is just hilarious. It's really funny and really hilarious. So yeah, I like that. But from the very beginning, and one of the things that I had in common with Dave Brockie was a sense of humor, that we couldn't resist a funny joke, especially if it was super insulting and like really not PC, you know?
Yep.
That like, just like the underground comic, you know? It's like, it's so funny, like just like the character of Bad Bitch, to talk about her again, you know, she is so un-PC, you know, and I'm sure that there are a lot of women that would come to see this show with the wrong attitude and would see her and be like super insulted, you know, but at the same time, she's funny, you know, she is really super funny. And that's what it's all about, you know, like if you were to write down what happens in the Gwar show, you know, and then read it, you know, read through the list out loud, you know, like at the Mentors trial when they read, what was the song? Smell my anal vapor, your face is my toilet paper. You know, they read that out in court. You know? How can they not laugh when they read that? You know? Even though they're on trial for obscenity, how can you not laugh at something so stupid? And that's what it's really all about. It's just about having fun and letting your hair down and getting some fake blood on you, you know, and because inside every person, you know, that, you know, there's that primal urge, you know, and when it comes down to it, we're just little parameciums craving sex and violence, you know, bumping into each other, you know, and getting juice on each other and stuff like that. So come to the Gwar show and experience a little bit of that. And I think a little
bit of Techno Destructo.
Will be everything, you know, it'll just like, compared to like just like in Cabaret, you know, you come and forget your troubles. So what if the world is going to end and America is about to turn into a fascist autocracy, you know, come to the Cabaret.
Yes. Okay, well, Techno Destructo, I keep seeing him popping in.
I think I'm having like we're experiencing technical difficulty here, and something bad might be happening. Like Techno Destructo interfering with the signal, and like something bad is It's Techno Destructo, and I'm interrupting your attempted communication.
But I will correct the misinformation that was just communicated to you by that rank imposter of a human being. So what do you want to know, Earth person?
Okay, great. Well, I'm so glad to be here with you, Mr. Techno Destructo. Hi there, sir. It's been years fighting Gwar, those scum dogs of the universe. How's the fight going? Any new tricks up your sleeve for the 30th anniversary tour?
Has it been that long? Certain brain cells have suddenly grown together again and compelled me back on my quest to destroy Gwar. Wait to get my claw around the head of odorous Urungus and squeeze it until the blood and brains spew out into the audience, on to the tongues of his mindless worshippers as they sit there with their mouths agape. And yet it is all going to happen this fall, maybe in October, maybe in December, maybe even November. I'm not really sure. You'll have to look it up for yourself. But it could easily happen. Oh my God. My inner sanctum is falling apart. Here in Los Angeles, there are many earthquakes. I'm in my secret sanctum that's below the subway system of Los Angeles. That's terrible.
Erratic. So much going on. So it's recently been announced here on Earth, especially in Los Angeles, here on Earth, that aliens are real. Have you ever met an alien? Can you tell us about the aliens that you've met in your travels?
You must be talking about those gray alien sperm smugglers that have been circling around the Earth for years. They've made deals with the President of the United States way back since Kennedy days. And, you know, it's sort of like sounds like a contract, like an exchange of technology in exchange for a certain number of cattle and human beings that are allowed to be experimented and sort of mutilated and in the field and stuff like that and all. It's an interesting field, actually. They asked me to help them with it, but I wasn't really that interested. You can never really trust the gray aliens. But I'll tell you what, as a Gwar fan, the person that you have to be most afraid of, who is possibly an alien impersonator, you know, one of those lizard guys that like eats mice and stuff like that. But he's also rumored to be the illegitimate offspring of Edna Grambo. You know who Edna Grambo is, right? No. Gwar's arch enemy, the leader of the Morality Squad. Well, she had an illegitimate offspring with Mr. Burns. You know, Mr. Burns, the nuclear power plant tycoon that you may have possibly heard of. He's on TV quite a bit. But he and Edna Grambo, they had this child. His name is Mitch McConnell, and he's currently influencing human beings and the development of human technology and society, particularly in America. So watch out. I don't think that he's shown up on the timeline yet, but when this person shows up, be forewarned that it marks the beginning of the end.
Oh no, what's the end gonna look like? What will we see when we look outside? Extreme weather?
Well,
fires?
I don't know.
Rainstorms?
You know, I was hanging out with this cyborg friend of mine. His name is Death Dealer 2021. No, actually, it was 2012. He keeps changing his name. See, he was like Death Dealer 20,000. Then all of a sudden, 20,000 came and went. So now he changed his name to Death Dealer 2012, you know. So now then he keeps changing his name on and on. This is a character that I met while I was working in freak show wrestling, which is something I've been doing since my exile from Gwar. While I was growing back together, I was carefully eating the brains of the top-notch wrestlers in freak show wrestling. Wrestlers like Sin Bodhi, and just recently, Sin Bodhi and the Shocker were on the Penn and Teller like magic TV program or something. And so yeah, that's one of the things you should look up online. But yeah, so I've eaten the brains of most of, including Funny Bone himself, the title holder of the Freak Show title. I have tasted the delicate sweet meats between his ears as well. And I carefully selected the parts of their brains that contained their wrestling knowledge. So that now, when I attack Gwar again, I will have the combined wrestling ability of the whole lineup of every freak show wrestling superstar ever. How can they possibly overcome those odds?
No odds. You can't overcome it. You said sweet meats. It got me thinking about Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is almost upon us. Have you ever taken part in a Thanksgiving before?
Thanksgiving. Isn't that the holiday the Americans celebrate the killing and raping of the indigenous native people in sort of like a cannibalistic blood orgy kind of a way?
Yes, that's it. That's the one.
I've participated in similar festivities, but not particularly.
Great. Well, I'm so glad to be talking to you today. I'll be hosting my own Thanksgiving. So if you want to come by with some gray aliens, we can do a blood orgy fest things, all the things. You just bring the blood orgy. We'll do a Thanksgiving. It'll be good. It'll be great.
Perfect. You know, the gray aliens taste best deep fried.
Deep fried. Got it. Perfect. We'll bring that. That'll be what you bring to the Thanksgiving, the Scandalous Thanksgiving. So I know you.
This is Techno Destructo. Gwar must die.
Gwar, okay. I'm so glad you said Gwar must die, because that brings me to my next question. I know Gwar must die, and I know that the need to kill Gwar runs deep for you. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself why they must die?
Why must Gwar die? You need to ask me this question? So, just in case you hadn't heard, Gwar had been frozen in Antarctica for thousands upon thousands of years. And I came here because their sentence had been completed and they were ready to rejoin the scum dogs of the universe.
And so I came here to where they had been entombed. And when I entered their tomb, I found that they were gone. And so I searched the earth until I found a flyer, because I had discovered that they had become a shitty rock and roll band. That's right. These former elite warriors, the scumdogs of the universe, had lowered themselves because they had gotten seduced and tricked by this sleazy rock and roll music mogul who had seduced them with drugs and sex and all kinds of other self-indulgent pastimes that maybe it's not best that we go into right now. But I offered them the opportunity to join me and conquer the universe together. And guess what they said?
What did they say?
Something like, "Fuck you, we're having too much fun." And at that moment, I knew that Gwar must be destroyed. But over the years, as we have fought each other, they have heaped untold shame and humiliation upon me, to the point where I suffered severe brain damage. And this time is the time where I will actually destroy them and spit their brains into the audience, into the faces of their mindless followers. And it will be the last show. So I advise you to get your tickets today. Oh, and one other thing. There's something else I feel compelled that I must mention, because if it weren't for this, none of this would have happened. I wouldn't even be here today to talk to you if it weren't for this. Where is it? Wait, I'm trying to find it. Here somewhere.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah.
Here it is. Yeah, inside this mysterious plastic wrap, it's starting to be unveiled. What is it?
It's hot sauce.
It's a bottle of Techno Destructo's garlic death grip hot sauce. And the reason that I must mention it is because if it weren't for Kyle Golson, who runs Hella Hot Sauce, which is a company from San Jose, California, and I must talk about the hot sauce. It's called Garlic Death Grip, and you gotta get some. You can get it at houseofhunter.com.
So hot.
It's time
It's so hot.
for me to go now.
Oh, it was so hot. It was overwhelming. It overwhelmed even Techno Destructo. So get your tickets. It's going to be the last chance you get to see. But wait, is he still there? Is he alive? Oh, no, I don't know. You'll have to see at the show.